Back to Metroid Prime Remastered, where we'll be finishing the rest of it. Last time we ended with me finding the ice beam near the reflecting pool in the Chozo ruins, which opened up even more exploration options for me. Starting in Save Station 3, I go through that tunnel which leads to a door to transport to Talon the World East. I activate the lift but don't use it. I instead return to the Hall of the Elders. I scan the switch next to the door to get rid of the force field so I no longer need to use the statue to get back here. Or I would if I was competent. Instead I take the long way back through the tunnel without shutting it off. I hate revisiting this room because I need to a few times, and every time I do I have to kill these 3 Chozo ghosts if I want to get anything done. Once they're dealt with again, I return to the coloured bomb slots and shoot the white one with the ice beam so I can bomb the slot and get a new bowling lane. Back into the Elder's hands to be rolled into a secret room under this one for my 7th energy tank. I take the long way back towards the reflecting pool, making sure to shut off that force field this time. Back to the transport to Talon the World East so I can take that lift up. When I get there, through the door into Transport Tunnel C. At this point, Talon the World's music has changed from the NES Brinstar remix to a new original track. I've always been a fan of this track. It also reminds me of how the Crateria exterior music changed in Super Metroid after a certain amount of progress. I jump the trees to reach the door into the overgrown cavern. I roll through the hole into the Venom Weed where I can get another missile expansion. Then through another hole to the door leading to the Frigate crash site, where the remains of the Frigate Orpheon fell and were submerged. There isn't too much I can do here right now, but I will be able to come back later. It seems some of the injured space pirates survived the crash, but they're still in a bad state. I jump towards the right and wade through water to the blue door. I blow up the blast shield and enter the waterfall cavern. A short tunnel where I have to roll under some rocks to the door leading back to the landing site. And that's every door connected to the starting room checked out. I backtrack through the path taking me through the root cave back to the transport to Magmore Caverns East. And once back there, I travel all the way through to the lift to Phendrana Drifts North. Tougher enemies are around the place now as the shorelines are covered in baby she-goths. Next to the door to the temple entryway, I blow up that cordite I pointed out earlier. I scan it to reveal a hole to a magnetic rail and ride it up to my 20th set of missiles. That's a nice round 100. The ruins entryway has also replaced its bamboos with baby she-goths. And the baby she-goths in the Ice Ruins West have been replaced with a fully grown she-goth, now just a regular enemy. Returning to the ruined courtyard, I no longer have to do the water rising puzzle to climb to the top. There's a rail I can spiderball my way up instead. Now back into Research Lab Hydra. There was that cordite casing in here I mentioned last time, so I blow it up for another missile expansion. While fighting a sentry drone on my trip back through, I get reports of strange gravity readings deeper into Phendrana. Then all the way back to the research core where I found the thermal visor. I can finally open that white door at the bottom to enter the pike access. A short tunnel with a purple door at the end leading into the frozen pike. A new version of the Phendrana Drifts music for this part of the region. I'm starting halfway up this tall room. I drop down below to this purple door, but miss. I climb up to it and go through into the Frost Cave access. I have a tiny crevice to roll through, followed by entering a cave where the door into the Frost Cave is. Right away I scan the glider, which I can't do anything with yet. I can use a grapple beam to swing from them, but that thing still hasn't shown itself yet. More worrying is the Hunter Metroid that flies up from below. These will try to attach a tentacle to Samus to try draining life energy from a safer distance. But I now have the Ice Beam, making all Metroids far more manageable. Freeze and then fire a missile to shatter it. To the right I target a stalactite in the ceiling and shoot that down to create a platform to a door. I drop down and shoot down another in front of another door. I take the one I shot down first and go through the door to Save Station C. Back into the Frost Cave, I then take the second stalactite I shot down to reach the door to the upper edge tunnel. A longish ball tunnel leading to another purple door out into Phendrana's edge. Another very tall room, but I don't need to do any climbing just yet. After taking out the flying pirates, I look down into the water and scan the gel zap. It can cause static on the visor but is usually easy to ignore. I drop down into the water and go through the door there. This leads into the lower edge tunnel. A very slow trek until the tunnel takes me out of the water and leads me to the next door into the Hunter Cave. There are 3 more doors to choose from in here. First I get to work shooting down all these stalactites in the ceiling. The door to the left is being kept from me by a grapple point, so I hop across my new platforms in the water to reach the rightmost door. This one leads into the lake tunnel. This has me submerged again on my way to the next door leading into the gravity chamber. I follow the path forward as well as I can with my limited visibility, being dropped into a group of tentacles. I scan one to add Aqua Reaper to the logbook. I climb up the nearby steps and jump over more Aqua Reapers to find the source of the gravity readings, the gravity suit. I have always adored the gravity suit. Samus's suit always looks good in purple no matter what the shape of it is. One of the few bits of non-game, non-amiibo Metroid merch I own is the World of Nintendo figure of this game's gravity suit. The others I own are their big Metroid figure and the other M. Samus Figma if you were curious, and random posters from pre-orders or old mid-2000s game magazines. Not only do I have a bigger damage reduction, but all negative effects of being in water are gone. No slow movement, no reduced jump height, no more limited vision. The only downside is that because you aren't supposed to get the gravity suit before the spider ball, you can never see a normal purple morph ball, only the ugly yo-yo. Even if you sequence break, no spider ballless gravity suit morph ball model exists. It will always look like a yo-yo regardless. I will say that at least the purple and blue is a better colour combination than the previous orange and green. With my full jump height back, I can climb up to a higher door. This one puts me into the chamber access. Sentry drones are much easier to fight when they're alone and not in the dark. The door at the end puts me back into the Hunter Cave but higher up. I can run across the cliff to reach this cave's last door. This puts me in the Hunter Cave access. A straightforward room filled with gel zaps on the way to a door leading back out to the bottom of the frozen pike. Now I have a very long climb up a few tree bridges and through little ice tunnels until I reach one last purple door at the top. This leads to the transport access. Right away there's an energy tank behind a sheet of ice, but I can't reach it yet. The door at the end loops me back around to the transport to Magmor Cavern south near the Quarantine Cave. I go down the lift and travel all the way back to the geothermal core. I hop across the puddle spores and the platforms in the lava for the blue door opposite where I entered from. This leads to the North Core Tunnel. With a missile I can break down this stalactite to crush the magma below and create a platform leading to the door to the Twin Fires. More grapple points here, but also more stalactites to shoot down. I use these to cross the lava and pass through a tunnel filled with flamethrowers. Then more stalactites to shoot down so I can reach the door to the Twin Fires tunnel. This one has a long magnetic rail journey over lava, and at the end is the door back to the transport to Talanoa the World West, closing another loop on the map. I take the lift up and return to the landing site to refuel. Now to return to the Frigate crash site so I can finally take this place on. I travel as far down in the water as I can until I find steps to a ball tunnel that leads back to the surface right next to the wreckage. Nearby is the white door that lets me inside, but first I hop back into the water because I missed this missile expansion in a little alcove. Now I can enter the Frigate access tunnel. So another inspiration from Super Metroid. I have to explore the crashed remains of a spaceship, but instead of being haunted, this one's flooded. How long have I been on this planet? Nature seems to have claimed sections of this very quickly. The door at the end leads into the main ventilation shaft section C. I drop down to the bottom of this shaft and through the tunnel there to reach the door to the main ventilation shaft section B. It looks like I missed some turrets the first time through, and they even managed to stay powered on. Deal with them and use the thermal visor and wave beam to power on the door leading into the main ventilation shaft section A. In here is a new enemy swarming the walls to scan, the Talon Crab. They act just like the Scarabs, just without the dropping from the ceiling. That's also 75% of the logbook scanned. The shaft eventually ends up underwater with the door at the end leading into the reactor core, the room where I fought the Parasite Queen at the start of the game. It's also where the Crash Frigate's main theme starts playing, and it's another track I really like. I drop down a decent distance to scan these aqua pirates, basically flying pirates but underwater. But one difference is that their shots move slower and are easier to avoid. There are two targets for the thermal visor and wave beam on this level, and one more below to power on the next door, followed by one last one right next to the door. It leads back into the reactor access. Two more power cells to shoot to open the next big door, with the blue door to the side being the save station. The big door takes me to the cargo freight lift to Deck Gamma. First I blow up this grate with a charge shot for my 8th energy tank behind it. There's another power cell to activate nearby, and since there'll be no lifts working underwater, I'll have to climb. There's a lot of floating debris to act as platforms for this climb, some with Aqua Reapers waiting to jump me. And while climbing up I have to keep an eye out for more power cells to activate. I remember once in my first full playthrough, I tried to brute force my way through with no gravity suit, assuming I'd find it at the end of this place. There's one more power cell at the top to power on the blue door. Through it is the Deck Beta Transit Hall, and then through there to Biohazard Containment. Up top here is another power cell, when I can drop down to scan the underwater Aqua Drone, not much different than the Sentry Drone. Blow up two of them and one of the pods down here has another power cell inside. One of the pod doors is made of cordite, and I super missile it to reveal another missile expansion. I activate a third power cell back next to the door I entered from to power on the door below. This takes me to the Deck Beta Security Hall. Then through the corridor into Biotech Research Area 1. I take out a trio of Aqua Pirates and drop down to activate a power cell below the door. Then another below the door I entered from, and one more next to the door I entered from. I go through the newly powered door into the Deck Beta Conduit Hall, and then through that into the connection elevator to Deck Beta. The floor below blows up to reveal a floating pirate corpse. I first look down and scan an Aqua Sac, the underwater variant of the Sap Sac and just as explosive. I drop down to the bottom and go through the door into the Hydro Access Tunnel. This contains a morph ball tunnel where the water allows me to jump higher in ball form. Halfway through this tunnel I can do a series of high bomb jumps to reach my 9th energy tank. I bounce through the rest of the tunnel to reach the door that leads out of the frigate and into the Great Tree Hall. A tall room named for the big tree in the middle, I climb up out of the water to find a white door. I go through it into Transport Tunnel E, leaving the rest of the room for later. There's a bridge here with a bright blue substance that my suit warns me is highly radioactive. Making any contact with this will cause continued damage until I get off it. I follow the room to the end and into the transport to Phazon Mines East. I take the lift down to finally reach this place I've seen mentioned in pirate data before. Through the door and into the quarry access, then through this corridor and out into the main quarry. This place is tough. Down to the left where there are some extremely damaging turrets above this force field, I take one out before scanning the second to get the mega turret in the logbook. In front of the force field are two switches that both need to be scanned to get rid of it. But first I get climbing the catwalks up and around the equipment in the middle of this area. I deal with a few space pirates on the way, and at the top is a power cell that activates a monitor in this nearby glass cage. Scanning that will activate the crane controls. I swing the crane into a wall nearby to reveal another missile expansion. There's another monitor I can scan here which mentions Phazon mutations and candidates for being elite pirates. I spy the ball along the rail attached to the crane to get myself that missile expansion. I then drop down and go up another rail below to a purple door leading to Save Station Mines A. For some reason this one needs an extra scanning to get to. Now comes what I find to be the hardest single stretch of the game. I go past the force field I shut down and through the white door into Security Access A. Two mega turrets to deal with here. These are a good target for the ice beam since them being immobile means the slow shots don't matter. Once they're dealt with, it's through the door at the other end into the mine security station. The doors lock and I get attacked by a group of shadow pirates. The ice beam really gets to shine here. Watching the pirates just shatter on contact is very satisfying. I continue forward to find a red door I can't open, but it's blocked by a barrier anyway. Then around the corner, down to the other end, and then up this little ramp. At the top I get a cutscene where some space pirates glowing purple drop from the ceiling. I scan them to learn that they are wave troopers. The space pirates have started trying to reverse engineer Samus's weapons, with the wave beam being the first result I run into. But they weren't copied perfectly, and so have a stronger weakness to the beam they're using. So showing them what the real wave beam can do destroys them. Good old charge wave beam electrocution stun lock. I take them all out to unlock the doors, then follow the rest of the path around to the end. There's a damaged gate, but it's made of a new material I haven't seen before and can't break, Bendesium. Nearby, a purple door is in the ceiling for me to jump through into Security Access B. A small tunnel with more of the blue hazardous material I saw before the lift here in the Telenor world, so we can work out that this stuff is Phazon. A couple shadow pirates to deal with, but otherwise a short room to the white door in the ceiling leading into Elite Research. Before the pirates notice me, I scan a nearby computer to activate the platforms leading up. There's this big lad in the pod, and after dealing with the normal pirates around him, scanning the computers tells me that he is an elite pirate. It's not just Phazon he's got going for him, but he's been loaded up with loads of weapons. His tank is reinforced with that Bendesium stuff I first saw a couple rooms ago. The remaining computer has some pirate data for me. I get to read more about that Project Helix I found out about at the lab in Fendrana. Jabbing Phazon into space pirate embryos unsurprisingly turned out disastrous. Those few that survived into infanthood went mad and started killing everything around them, with none surviving into adulthood. However, that was fixed when they managed to find a parasite that can survive with Phazon and included that into the experiment, resulting in a batch of matured elite pirates. I climb the platforms to the next floor and deal with another wave of wave troopers before running around to the other side to scan the computers. One report has the pirates shitting themselves because they know Samus has landed on the planet. Another lowers these walls and more platforms leading to the next floor. Up top is another new enemy, but my scanner instead gets caught on the controls of the industrial pulse beam, so that fires a wall off screen. I finally scan the power trooper, the ones that have copied my basic power beam. I fall to the bottom to find more wave troopers waiting. Back up top, I take out the power trooper and get to work using this pulse beam. There's a lot of weak walls surrounding this area and a nearby spinner to aim it with. I finally realise I haven't scanned the spinner for the logbook and get that done. So I use the boost ball to aim the beam and fire it at each segment of wall. The one directly opposite me hides a white door, and the middle left section of the wall gets me another missile expansion. I then go through the door I revealed into Research Access. This one has me roll down a rail while trying to avoid getting electrocuted by all this moving machinery. At the bottom is the door into ore processing. Once I take out the power troopers, I have this puzzle to deal with. The central pillar has 3 sections that can be rotated separately. All 3 have their own set of 3 magnetic rails going up them, red, yellow and blue. This hologram shows the current setup, and next to it is a bomb slot that rotates the bottom segment. I hop inside and bomb once so the blue rail connects to another rail to the left. I then roll up said rail to the second level. And up here is the bomb slot that rotates a central section. I use this one to connect the red rail to an overhead section on the next level to the left. Then back down to the bottom to connect the bottom red rail to the middle, then I can spider ball up to the third level. Up here is the third bomb slot for the top segment, but it's covered in Bendesium from a collapsed wall, so I can't use it yet. There's also a white door on the way around to it. I go through that first into elevator access A. Another spider ball track to ride down, this time I have to avoid scatter bomboos. Through the door at the bottom is elevator A. I scan the switch to activate the lift and ride it down to Phazon Mines level 2. While the lift descends, I can look out a window to see how deep we're going. Through the door at the bottom into elite control access. There's this explosive crate that kills a hiding enemy before it can jump me. Hiding behind the crate was my next missile expansion. Then at the end is a door into elite control. There's another tank with an elite pirate inside, and this one wakes up. It breaks out, and the first thing I do is scan it. By holding up their arm, they can absorb my beam shots. That's why I save a charge shot for when they put the hand down to fire from the huge cannons on their back. And then I get more confident and start shooting super missiles at its head during that moment. I'm surprised when I keep up the pattern well enough that I take it down without getting hit once. I now have free access to the rest of the room, and there is a lot to scan here. There's continued pirate self-shitting over Samus's continued tearing through their forces. There's pirate data about the process of reverse engineering Samus's weapons. They didn't just try the beams, those were just the successful ones. They tried to replicate the morph ball and horribly mangled 4 of their test subjects before giving up on that one. I find that elites get special food that regular pirates aren't allowed under punishment of their rations being halved. The next pirate data I find is the bounty being put on Samus, including the retrieval of her suit and weapons, after finding she was responsible for the destruction of their Zebus forces. The next one I scan has talk of how the pirates have failed all attempts to breach the shield leading into the impact crater. Their scans have found that there's a massive creature already living inside the crater gestating by absorbing huge amounts of Phazon. Of course they want to get inside and figure out what it is. There's a white door behind the elite's tank, but instead I go upstairs. The ice troopers first appear here and I scan them too. Given a charge shot results in freezing, they are easy to deal with individually. But the slow rate of fire and charge of the ice beam makes a group of them probably the most damaging of the beam troopers to fight. Up the catwalks to the next set of computers to scan. Most of it is putting out warnings about Samus, then a little further to the top for even more, including pirate data. In this entry, they've also figured out that the barrier keeping them out of the impact crater is linked to the Chozo artifacts, but not how yet. The next entry I scan is about pirate personnel in the Chozo ruins running into the Chozo ghosts and getting wiped out. They believe their appearances are linked to the locations of artifacts and believe the ghosts are trying to stop the pirates from obtaining them. The next pirate data I scan sees the pirates work out the connection between the artifacts and the statues at the temple. The one next to it covers the pirates first arriving and discovering the Chozo once lived here. They see no value in the Chozo ruins and are fine with destroying the evidence they existed here in their search for Phazon. One monitor shows a request for more elite pirates to be sent to the Metroid quarantine areas because the Metroids keep overwhelming the regular pirates and draining their lives. One monitor, when scanned, turns off the force field up here so I can continue. Then one more piece of pirate data. They got stuck trying to translate the messages on the statues that point out where the artifacts are. They can only assume that most of them will be found in places of significance to the Chozo civilization. Then I can go through the white door in the ceiling into the ventilation shaft. I drop down and approach the door only for a pair of puffers to come in through the ceiling to try and gas the place. Luckily they forget to lock the doors and I escape out into Omega Research. The computers aren't interesting and past them is a platform leading to a door blocked by more Bendesium, plus some more wave troopers to deal with. Dropping down to the side, I land next to another elite pirate having a nap with his tank damaged, and the switch to remove the force field into a room with another sleeping elite. While some power troopers shoot at me, I ignore them and have a read of some more pirate data. There's one elite in particular which has managed to withstand Phazon infusion better than the rest of them, and has managed to be made even more powerful through further infusions. They call this one the Omega Pirate, and are hoping they can make this the new standard for their armies someday. However, it needs to devour far more Phazon than the others to survive. Now the power troopers can die. One of the monitors has one of my favourite little things, a message that unauthorised feeding of the Metroid is prohibited. Even some pirates find Metroids cute and try to give them extra snacks, probably getting themselves killed doing so. There's also another elite hiding away in the corner. I go into the nearby tunnel and drop through the door in the floor into the dynamo access. Through the corridor, past another sleeping elite and through the door to the central dynamo. This is the last room of this long stretch and I have only 3 energy tanks left. Scanning the dynamo from above, I detect multiple safety malfunctions. I drop down and get attacked by a semi-invisible sentry drone, the only enemy in the game I can't scan. None of my visors can pick it up normally, so I can't lock on, meaning I must rely on manual aiming. Suddenly I'm having a hard time hitting it, but I managed to take it down without losing much health. But we aren't done here yet. One of the dynamo legs explodes to reveal a hole, and underneath is a new item, but it's in this electric maze. I scanned the monitors first to find that dumbshit pirates have been bringing pets to the Phazon mines and losing them to Phazon madness, no doubt getting even more personnel killed, so pets are now banned. Then it's into that maze. Normally the morph ball feels perfectly fine to control, but here I'm so desperate to not roll myself into the electricity and get myself killed at the last hurdle that I'm focused a bit too hard and my control is a bit wobbly. There's a few chunks that need bombing to continue further and I eventually reach that item. It's the power bombs. A huge explosion strong enough to wipe out the dynamo above me, so I don't need to roll all the way back out. The power bomb's main function is to destroy all that bendesium blocking me from stuff, but it's good for dealing with certain enemies as well. I also have 50% of all items now. The doors are now unlocked and I go into this white one nearby to finally reach save station Mines B. I believe that is the longest stretch in the game without the chance to save, and I remember dying on it many times on my first playthrough 15 years back. I'm honestly astonished I made it through first time considering last time I played the game was in 2014. Back out and to the opposite side of this room, I can use a power bomb to blow up the bendesium blocking this white door leading into Quarantine Access A. 4 mega turrets around the corner and the door into Metroid Quarantine A. I get a look at some pirates and past them a force field keeping out the Metroids hanging out over a pool of Phazon. A monitor says there seems to be symbiosis between Phazon afflicted creatures, as elite pirates and irradiated Metroids have less aggression between them than other combinations of pirate and Metroid. And they're also jabbing Phazon into the local fungi too. Of course they are, would you expect any less by now? Then there's this computer which scanning will cause removal of the force field, letting Metroids into the room with the pirates being the first victims. I just stand there and let it happen, then use the ice beam to instantly deal with the Metroid. I go into the quarantined area to see these Phazon mushrooms the pirates have made. But I have a problem in that I've hit another dead end. There's a giant Phazon pool keeping me from reaching the rest of the room and no way to cross it. But my suit has picked up some spectral results back in the Talanoa world near the Great Tree Hall. So I have a long trek back the way I came, but I can check out some new stuff on the way. Also for my logbook I can scan some powerbomb ammo dropped by a Metroid. On my way back through Omega Research, the elite pirate behind the force field has woken up and he wants a fight. This one actually gets to try out his shockwave ground punch attack, which I'm very bad at timing the jump over, but I take him out easily too. Now back into the ventilation shaft, which is still toxic. I powerbomb the bendesium grate here to open up a hole into the control room. I jump out and scan the switch to turn the fans on. They push the puffers into the opposite fan to destroy them, the fan and the grating. Where that fan once stood is the 10th energy tank. Back into Omega Research, I forgot about the bendesium blocking a door on the top floor. I blow that up and go through a new door into Map Station Mines to get that downloaded. Back to Elite Control, I finally check out the white door behind the first Elite Pirate's tank. It leads into the maintenance tunnel, where I roll through the hole to find a huge chunk of bendesium blocking the rest of it. I blow it up and go to the door at the other end, leading to the Phazon Processing Centre. But I don't want to come here just yet, so it's back to backtracking. Back in ore processing, I can use the power bombs to unblock the bomb slot controlling the top section of the pillar. There's also Metroids in here now, but the power bombs wipe those out in one. I rotate the top section so that the yellow rail points in the opposite direction to me, connecting to another overhead rail. I then rotate the other two segments so that the yellow rails are connected, then ride them all the way up to the very top of this room where there's more bendesium to blow up. And behind it is a door leading into Storage Depot B, where it's finally time to regain the grapple beam. With this, I've now regained every piece of equipment I lost escaping the frigate Orpheon. This game changes the design by having it be a separate cannon on Samus's other wrist instead of coming out of the same cannon all her other beams do. Back out into ore processing, there's a grapple point up here leading to another door on the opposite end. This one leads into waste disposal. It has a little tunnel filled with water like in the crashed frigate, where jumping is much stronger than normal. The spring ball makes getting to the end of this much easier than it used to be. At the end is a white door leading back outside into the main quarry. There's a switch to scan up here, but I balls up and get shot off the edge. I lead the Phazon mines back to the Talanoa world. Back in the Great Tree Hall, I get climbing. I reach a spinner and use it to open a gate, then go through it to find a white door. Instead of going through, I turn and find a magnetic rail above where the gate used to be. What follows is a little rail climbing puzzle to reach the top of the room where there's another white door. This leads to the Life Grove tunnel. First there's a bendesium chunk to destroy to get inside this ball tunnel. This tunnel has a little half pipe I need to boost up to get out the other end and into the Life Grove where the item I was pointed to is waiting. It's my final visor, the X-ray visor. A sort of reworking of the one Super Metroid power-up no one cared about. This allows me to see invisible platforms, or in the case of this room, show me which of these walls are breakable. So I set off a power bomb and blow them all away to gain access to the rest of the room. There's a tunnel in one of the walls to jump to leading to a bridge and then jumping across more platforms before I'm interrupted by a trio of Chozo ghosts. With the X-ray visor I can now see them when they turn invisible. When I finally deal with them, a part of the statue blocking the exit above breaks. So I do my climb again and end up above the structure I found the visor in and roll back into the Life Grove tunnel. This time at the half pipe, I boost up on top of the big rock in the middle and use a bomb to break open a way inside for a missile expansion. The X-ray visor is all I needed to cross the Metroid quarantine in the mines, but now I have a few more means of exploration, let's get some item collecting done. I drop down to the white door I skipped in the Great Tree Hall and use the X-ray visor to find hidden platforms leading up to a blue door. Inside is the Great Tree Chamber containing only another missile expansion. Now finally through that white door I keep skipping. This one leads to Transport Tunnel D, and that leads to the Transport to Chozo Ruins South. I activate the lift and go down, and once I'm back in the ruins, through the door into Transport Access South. The door at the end here turns out to be the one white door in the reflecting pool I didn't go through. Back into the Hall of the Elders, I go through the white door opposite the Elder statue into Crossway Access South. Another corridor, and at the end is the white door leading to the Crossway that I couldn't go through yet last time I was here. Back into the Furnace, I go through the white door into the East Furnace Access. This leads to the other white door in the Hall of the Elders I didn't use before. So back to the Furnace and all the way back through the Arboretum. Chozo ghosts appear here now and I realise I had a false memory. For some reason I assumed Chozo ghosts always locked the doors of the rooms they appeared in, even if it's a room they respawn in every visit. For some reason I have memories of 15 years ago where I got very fed up of passing through this room while item hunting and having to stop and kill the ghosts every time, but obviously that can't be true. Back in the ruined fountain, there's been this blue door all along that I've ignored. This leads to my next short corridor, the Meditation Fountain. The door at the end leads into the Magma Pool, a place I'm only visiting now because I needed the grapple beam to cross it. There's this wall in the back covered in branches that scanning reveals is made of Bendesium, so I powerbomb it. That gets me my first powerbomb expansion, increasing the maximum I can hold by 2. There's also some Chozo lore hidden here. They have sealed the impact crater with the 12 Chozo artifacts, but now their future sight is cloudy to them. It seems dark, but there is a faint figure clearly representing Samus that gives them hope. I then go through the purple door nearby into the training chamber access. It seems just like a normal connecting tunnel, but those branches with the red leaves next to the door at the other end hide a morph ball tunnel leading to another missile expansion. Then through the door into the training chamber. Right away I get attacked by 2 Chozo ghosts. Once they're gone, 2 bomb slots break open on either side of this half pipe. I activate one to open up a magnetic rail and a piston leading to it. The other one opens up a small tunnel opposite the door I entered from. I take the piston to the rail, take that to a tunnel, and land next to my 11th energy tank. Then through the hole I open into the piston tunnel. A few pistons to either avoid or ride up on the way to the other end back into the main plaza. In this spot I finally scan the grapple point for the logbook now I can use them. Then I can finally grapple over to the missile expansion the establishing shot showed me first time I got here to hit a maximum of 150. Looking down at this tree and scanning this stub has it say that it's decomposing. I super missile it to break it open and reveal another missile expansion. I have to climb up around the other side to drop down into it. Next, back to the watery hall, the charge beam room once again. There's a deep part of the water I can sink into and enter a little cave leading to another missile expansion. Next revisited location is the ruined shrine where I found the morph ball. And now this place has Chozo ghosts too. I can't ignore these ones as I have boost balling to do. First I use the half pipe and boost to the left of the door I entered from to find a small hole leading to yet another missile expansion. That'll be all for now, I'll do the rest of this room later. Now back to the Telenor world and back to the root cave. I climb as high as I can and then use the X-ray visor to find more platforms. Once the red door I can't open yet is in view, I use the visor again to see a platform and to the left from it is my next missile expansion. Next, back into Magmore Caverns. I return to the short tunnel to reenact a memorable Super Metroid moment by powerbombing the glass tunnel to destroy it. Underneath I have a power up for the Ice Beam. It's the Ice Beam's equivalent to the Super Missile, the Ice Spreader. Charge an ice shot and then use a missile to fire a more powerful shot. It does cost 10 missiles though instead of the Super Missile's 5. Then comes a long trek over to the geothermal core. With the grapple beam I can finally swing over to these platforms. Each one has a spinner on it that raises a layer of the platforms higher. Once that one is as high as it can go, I jump to the next one up and do it again. I jump to the first one I raise and onto a platform with a magnetic rail on it. I spin this one up and then jump to the previous platform and then to the one I just raised. Then I can go up the track to a higher platform and then jump over to the final platform with a bomb slot. Bombing this one activates the machinery and has it raise the ceiling to reveal a very long chain of magnetic tracks. So I get started. There's a lot of dropping and bomb jumping between segments of tracks, huge square sections covered in parasites and little square platforms to jump around. It goes on for quite a while before I reach a white door blocked by Bendesium. I blow it up and go through the door into plasma processing. It's here I grab my fourth and final beam, the plasma beam. It's the strongest beam and has fire properties, which opens up a few more things. It can also open the red doors. The beam is now red, which makes sense to get across the fire part of it. But there is the kid in me whose only game in the series for years was Super Metroid, still thinking, but the plasma beam's green, they never should have changed it. You know, despite the fact that most people, myself included, almost never saw a green plasma beam anyway because we always kept the ice beam combined with it since we got it so much earlier. Next place to return to is the workstation tunnel connected to the Magmore workstation. This tunnel is blocked with Bendesium, so I blow it up. The door at the other end of the tunnel takes me to the transport to Phazon Mines West. Out of the door into transport access. It's filled with Phazon, so I have to grapple over to the next door. This leads into the Phazon Processing Centre, the room I opened up last time I was here but turned around at. It's a very tall room and I'm starting at the top. I drop down to scan the final beam trooper, the plasma trooper. I then drop further down and dash straight through the door into the maintenance tunnel. From there I get heading back towards the Metroid quarantine. But on the way back, the elite pirate in the Dynamo access breaks free, so I deal with him. I then make it back to Metroid Quarantine A and use the X-ray visor to reveal the invisible platforms across that Phazon pool. Then climbing nearby platforms and using the visor to reach a magnetic rail going up. But first I powerbomb the wall to break it open, then powerbomb another to reveal the path to this rail going over the Phazon pool I just crossed. Across it is an invisible platform that I ride up to a missile expansion. Then back to the rails I skipped earlier. Up them and through the white door they lead to into Elevator Access B. A short cave filled with burrowers with the door at the end leading to Elevator B. I activate it and take another ride down and through the door at the bottom into the Fungal Hall access. In here I get to see the effects of the plasma beam on most enemies when it just completely incinerates them on the spot. I drop down to these mushrooms in a Phazon pool and spot a missile expansion underneath one of them. I could wait until later when I can do this safely, but I want it now. I roll up into the most dangerous substance on the planet and grab it. A few seconds results in half an energy tank's health lost. Then it's through the door down here into Fungal Hall A. While I have to hop across these giant mushrooms, I also have a room filled with Hunter Metroids to fight off. It gets especially dangerous when I have to use a glider to grapple over a big Phazon pool to reach the next door. It takes 4 attempts in the end to make that jump and I continue into the Phazon mining tunnel. First I have some Bendesium blocking the way into the ball tunnel to blow up. This one gets me every time. There are disappearing platforms or the Phazon ready to make me fall in and take huge damage, so I have to boost across. Past it I can see an entire second route made of Phazon. No chance. I take the other route to the door into Fungal Hall B. This one just has regular Metroids but more of the floor is taken up by Phazon. And I still have to use a glider to cross a pool of it, but there are 2 red doors at the end here. I first take the door on the left into Missile Station Mines. I fill up my missiles and then swing over to the right door, landing on the ground far below it. This is what I wanted though, as I can bomb a bit of the ground here to find another missile expansion. I can now swing up to that door and enter Quarantine Access B. Got to use mushrooms to hop over a Phazon pool, where invisible pulse bombers try to bomb me down into it. The door at the end leads into Metroid Quarantine B. After dealing with plasma troopers, both where I start and on the other side of the Phazon pool, I get rolling along a pair of magnetic rails and then jump to the next platform. After that, I grapple over the pool to the other side and scan a computer to get rid of the force field. A couple more beam troopers to deal with, and scanning this shaft has it revealed to be cordite and damaged. So super missiling gets me my next missile expansion. The computer mentions the Omega Pirate I've heard about before, saying that its natural lifespan is incredibly short. Despite all the extra strength, all the Phazon running through it is causing rapid degradation. Another monitor says that it can't handle missile attacks well. In the middle is more pirate data. This one shows the confidence the pirates have in the elites. Well, I've taken out 3 of them already before they could even be used in battle. Nearby is a red door into Save Station Mine C, then up the ramp to the second floor. The red door up here leads into the elite quarters access. 1 pirate in here, but the door is blocked off. That's because the bypass unit above is frozen. So a few plasma shots melt it and let me go through the door into the elite quarters. There's pools of Phazon on the floor and a huge tank with a massive pirate inside. I scan it to find that this is the Omega Pirate that I've read about. Once I approach it, it breaks free of the tank and what I find to be the first truly hard boss fight in the game begins. This guy killed me so many times first time through. His shoulders and thighs both have this Phazon plating on them. I can shoot them, but he also has the ability to absorb beam fire that the elites have. During that first one I take the chance to break the casing on his left thigh. Soon after, the right thigh casing is broken too. He keeps leaving himself open with that shockwave so the right shoulder goes in no time. Then he tries shooting from the cannons on his back, giving me the chance to break the last casing. While he falls over stunned, I can get some shots in on this cannon too. But then he turns into a Phazon skeleton and teleports away while random beam troopers drop in to distract me. The Omega Pirate then turns invisible and hangs out in a pool of Phazon to restore his casings. That's a chance to get some damage in before all 4 are restored. Charged plasma shots do especially good damage here. Enough damage and he'll give up and teleport to a different pool, hoping to get more healing in while I'm looking for him. More troopers appear and he uses that distraction to get all of his casings back. Once I deal with the troopers and focus on him again, I get too close and he decks me right in the face. They don't last long though and the cycle begins again. But this time the troopers distract me long enough that he heals his casings without me getting any further damage on him. Third time, I decide balls to the troopers, I'm ignoring them and focusing on the Omega Pirate. I still fail to find him before he recovers 3 casings, but I still manage to sneak a few shots in, getting him to just below half health. Now the distractions can be killed. Although that decision did lose me a few energy tanks, especially when the Omega Pirate keeps backing me into the Phazon. This time I decide against ignoring the troopers. Power and plasma are quicker to kill than wave and ice for me anyway. But I still take too long and only get 1 shot in before the Omega Pirate recovers. Now I'm nervous because I'm under half health too. 5th cycle I get a hooded selection of easy to kill pirates and can focus on stunning the Omega. Here I reduce him to less than a 5th of his health. The next cycle I ignore the troopers once again and just focus on mashing the fire button on that Omega. In this cycle I managed to finish him off. Considering my past experience with this guy, I felt very good about killing him first try here. He looks like he may go for one more attack, but instead he drops dead, falling on top of Samus. The Phazon inside him liquefies and bubbles around Samus, bonding to her suit and granting the Phazon suit. I also really like the Phazon suit. It looks so sleek in black with the red lines, and depending on the lighting, the grey can sometimes look a bit silver. I was a bit baffled and slightly irritated when Super Smash Bros. Ultimate gave Samus a new black palette swap, and not only was it not the Phazon suit, it was an original combination of colours that doesn't look as good as the Phazon suit. But with this suit, I have further damage reduction and can freely move about in Phazon unharmed. Samus is now so radioactive she's immune to radiation. I can now scan this nearby switch to activate a lift to the higher levels of this floor. I walk around the catwalks to reach another red door and go through into the processing centre access. Right away I have my 12th energy tank just floating there for me to grab. I then scan this switch to open the gate into a cave filled with Phazon that now can't harm me. Then through the door to end up back in the Phazon processing plant, but down at the very bottom. Down here are even more mutated Metroids to scan. This one is the Fission Metroid. They can split into 2 Metroids and have differing beam weaknesses depending on the colour of their whatever that is around their innards. Sometimes it feels like they take forever to kill, sometimes it feels like they're exploding out of nowhere. With the Phazon suit, I now have full exploration abilities. There is nowhere on Talon 4 left that is gated off by item progression, with the obvious exception of needing the Chozo artifacts to get into the impact crater of course. And I still need 10 more of those, plus all the uncollected items still out there. First I return to the mine security station, the only room with the red door behind the barrier. There was this grate made of bendesium last time I came through, and so I blow it up. I scan the computer behind it to get rid of the barrier in front of the red door, and through it is Storage Depot A. This contains the super missile equivalent for the plasma beam, the flamethrower. This one is a powerful continuous attack, but the range isn't very good and it chews through your missiles as you use it. Back in Elite Research I remember this pirate's tank being cracked and made of bendesium, so I powerbomb it. This is a more mutated Elite pirate, the Phazon Elite. I scan it. This one lacks the cannons and relies more on the shockwave attack. Even if it is stronger than a normal Elite, after the Omega Pirate, these guys aren't much of the threat anymore, so he goes down with little issue. Once he dies, it turns out his tank was hiding a Chozo artifact. This one is my third, the Artifact of Warrior. Still hanging out in the mines, I return to the Phazon processing plant. This specific wall here can be powerbombed, and behind it is another missile expansion. Time to take that nearby lift back to Magmore Cavern South, dash through as quick as I can to Talon the World West, and back to the Root Cave. The entire top half of this room was inaccessible to me before, but now with a combination of the grapple beam and the X-ray visor, I can reach the red door at the top and just barely fail the jump and have to do it all again. I actually make it and go through into the Arbor Chamber for my 40th missile expansion, getting me to 200 missiles. Next down to Chozo Ruins West, now to finally deal with those magnetic rails in the furnace. But first, Chozo ghosts appear here now as well. Scanning around, I find that the floor underneath the rails is bendesium, and so I powerbomb the floor to break it open and reveal a half-pipe underneath. Now I can finally reach the rails. The first two are easy enough, but then I have to land on this thin pipe with no rails that's also covered in parasites. Then two more rails, but I somehow get caught between the second one and a pipe, so I fall. It takes a few more tries to make it back to that rail and land on it properly this time. Then another thin pipe to roll across to one more rail to another missile expansion. That's 75% of all items collected. And now back to the ruined shrine to finally go through that purple door. But first, there's a bombable chunk in the arena I fought the plated beetle in that leads to another missile expansion. Now I boost up the half pipe right of the door and roll through a tunnel to the magnetic rail that leads to the purple door that opens into the Tower of Light access. Then through this short corridor into the Tower of Light itself. I've been saving this place until I built up a lot of missiles. I climb and look up when I can't climb any further. There are Oculus all over these pillars, and since I can't kill them, they are going to be a nightmare for this. I can't jump to the next platforms up, but underneath the pillar is cracked. In fact, they're all cracked at the same height, and it's brimstone. Usually brimstone takes just one missile to destroy, but here it takes 3. And 4 pillars, so that's 12 missiles to destroy all the cracked bits. This makes the structure holding all the platforms sink a little, letting me jump to the next level and creating more cracks further. But now there's the Oculus. They take up a lot of space and move, so I have to aim and time my shots just right or I'm seeing my missile bounce off into the distance. I managed this level's cracks with 14 missiles, only missing 2 shots. But there are even more Oculus, so next level takes 21 missiles. But that's the last lot and I can climb further to reach the last of these beam weapons, the super missile of the Wave Beam, the Wave Buster. Like the flamethrower, this is a continuous shot, so it can eat up your missiles if you're not paying attention. I then drop all the way to the bottom, underwater, and jump up to this purple door in the ceiling. This leads into the tower chamber where my 4th Chozo artifact is waiting, this one being the artifact of Life Giver. Next to the lift back down into Magmore Caverns North. Back to the Triclops pit, which now contains flying pirates. The X-ray visor shows some invisible platforms here, so I follow them to see a missile expansion inside this rock pillar. I super missile it away and grab the expansion. Flying pirates have also started appearing at the monitor station. Next to the door leading to Transport Tunnel A is a platform I couldn't reach first time through without the space jump boost. I can use it to get on top of the monitor station where there is a spinner. Using it will extend a bridge out to the side. I cross the bridge and follow the cliff it leads to another door leading to the Warrior Shrine. The Warrior Shrine from Mortal Kombat is cooler, this is just the same Elder statue I've seen before. But it does have my 5th Chozo artifact in its hands, the Artifact of Strength. There's also some Bendezium in front of the statue, so I powerbomb that floor to create a hole that drops me into the fiery shores. Down here is my 2nd powerbomb expansion. Then a nearby hole drops me into the main section of the room. And now back up the lift to Phendrana drifts north. I love using the plasma beam to incinerate the baby she-goths in no time, after having to deal with their armour and high health earlier in the game. On the shorelines there's a missile expansion behind a wall of ice that I can shatter with the plasma beam to reach it. On the roof in the Ice Ruins East there's a sneaky magnetic rail hidden away that took me a few minutes to find. It takes me to my next missile expansion. And underneath the higher up door there's another sheet of ice to shatter for another missile expansion. Ice Ruins West next. This roof here opposite the purple door has a sheet of ice on it. Shatter that to reveal my 3rd powerbomb expansion. Back into the quarantine cave where I fought Thardus. Next to the purple door to the south quarantine tunnel is a series of grapple points. They take me to a hole leading to the quarantine monitor, a small room containing just a missile expansion. Then to transport access where I can shatter this ice to get my 13th energy tank. Next is the frost cave where I grapple across the glider to the higher cliffs I couldn't reach before. There's a huge stalactite in the ceiling for me to shoot down. This one lands through the ice floor and makes a massive hole. Dropping under the ice I find another missile expansion. Now back to Phendrana's edge, and now I have the grapple beam I can climb all the way to the top. I swing across the glider to the ball tunnel and go through to the security cave. That's my 4th and final powerbomb expansion. Back in Phendrana's edge, on this platform near the top, using the thermal visor will show a door hidden behind the wall. I powerbomb that wall away and into the storage cave for my 6th Chozo artifact, the Artifact of Spirit. That's half of them. Back to the gravity chamber where I found the gravity suit. There's a massive icicle in the ceiling to shatter with the plasma beam. This reveals a grapple point that I can use to swing to another missile expansion, and then back down to Magmore Caverns South. I head to the Magmore workstation, a room I've been ignoring until now and just passing through. On the ground is a power cell, 3 of them actually. Activating all 3 sets off this machine that opens up a tunnel in the grating and cools the lava. The hole leading into that tunnel is nearby and I get rolling in. I'm on a timer, and the hard part is that this place is filled with Triclopses ready to make me waste time. I head through the tunnel I opened and scan a monitor inside to do the same on the opposite side of the room. So I speed through the tunnels again and through the new one I opened to another monitor to scan. That one opens up one more tunnel, which I rush through to find my 14th and final energy tank, That's a maximum health of 1499. Then comes a long journey back to the Talanoa world through the Chozo ruins. I return to the Artifact Temple to get hints for the remaining artifacts I didn't get hints at before. One says it can be found near Phendrana's shores by melting the ice in an elder's hands. Another says one is in a tunnel of Phazon in the Phazon mines. I next return to the Life Grove. In the pool is a little plug, so I bomb it to drain the water. Out comes a pillar with a spinner inside. Spin enough and it raises a bridge and the pillar it leads to, containing another artifact. That's 7 of them, this one being the Artifact of Chozo. The Chozo Artifact of Chozo. And then I get attacked by a trio of Chozo ghosts on the way out again. Well, these ones I can ignore, so I just piss off and leave them to their horrible purgatory. Chozo ruins again, to show why I can't enter the Sun Chamber the normal way from the Sun Chamber access anymore. After Flagra's death, the door was overgrown. Even the plasma beam can't burn this away. So I have to go the other way. After killing Flagra, I was sent on an, at the time, one-way path down the Sun Tower, but now I have the means to climb back up it again. I can roll up the magnetic rail but have to scan 4 symbols around the room to open the gate blocking it. The first is found by blowing up this cordite wall, and the second is found by blowing up the cordite wall opposite the first one. The third is at the top of one of the pillars, and the fourth is at the top of the opposite pillar. The gate opens and I have a long rail climb having to bomb jump around Oculus. It takes a few attempts after getting knocked off, but once again, after the first part where I need to bomb jump, the spring ball makes it much easier. I get to the top and return to the Sun Tower access where I see a Chozo ghost run from me. Then into the Sun Chamber where 3 Chozo ghosts emerge from the flower Flagra once lived in. After taking them all out, an artifact appears on top of the flower. The vines blocking the door to the Sun Chamber access also disappear. That's my 8th, the Artifact of Wild. Staying in the Chozo ruins, I next return to the Hall of the Elders. After killing the ghosts, I can shoot the red bomb slot and use that one to have the statue move to reveal a white door underneath. The door leads to the Elder Chamber, containing just the 9th Chozo artifact, the Artifact of World. That's 3/4 of them down. And now back to the Phazon mines. I fix a mistake I made first time I was here. I go through the waste disposal back to the main quarry and scan the switch there to move the crane to create a shortcut with its grapple point. Then a long journey back to the Phazon mining tunnel. I pointed out this rock keeping me from an entirely Phazon part of the tunnel last time, but now I have the Phazon suit, I can roll through it to safely reach the 10th Chozo artifact, the Artifact of Newborn. That's the last item to collect in the Phazon mines, as far as I'm aware. So on my trek back, I'll do a quick ranking of the game's main 5 areas. The Phazon mines comes last. It's a good idea and it's the most challenging, but it has my least favourite visual aesthetic and least memorable selection of music tracks. The Phazon areas look really cool, but most of it is not that interesting mining areas. Then I'd say Magmore Caverns. It has Lower North Air's music, which is great on its own, and it works as a good connecting region between the other 4 areas. A shame it's the only one without a boss. The next 3 are neck and neck. I'm having a hard time choosing, and my opinion might change before this video is even scheduled to go up. But if you ask me now, at this very moment, I'd put Phendrana Drifts 3rd. It's a gorgeous area with some of the best overall music in the game. What's holding it back in 3rd is pettiness. I'm still holding a grudge from my first playthrough for that first journey through the labs to get the thermal visor and trudging my way out after the power goes out. Even more than the stretch from the start of the Phazon mines to getting the power bombs, that part is the "oh yeah, I have to deal with that too" moment for me when it comes to replaying this game. Chozo Ruins is 2nd and very nearly came 1st, but I swapped positions when I remembered one part. I find it the most fun to explore, and it feels the most densely packed in terms of items and lore to find compared to its size. It feels like this place has something to come back for with nearly every new upgrade I find. I know they're all like that, but here it feels like there's reason to revisit it most. The fact it's arrived at so early, so there's more later upgrades to find and come back with, helps. That's why I was going to put it first, but the later game habit of throwing Chozo ghosts in so many rooms got old. I don't enjoy fighting them, especially when they respawn in rooms like the Arboretum and the Hall of the Elders every time you pass through, which for me tended to be a lot. So that leaves the Talanoa world as my favourite. The only area I think looks better than Phendrana Drifts. The jungle areas alone look great, but then there's also the crashed frigate with even more amazing music. It just feels like it has most of the strengths of all the areas with no real downsides. Chozo Ruins beats it on item collecting enjoyment, but that's it. Now back to Phendrana Drifts and back through the research lab. My target is the control tower. In the room above the east tower is a frozen window that can be melted. Looking through it I can see some explosives. I shoot them through the window with a missile and the explosion knocks down this tower through the wall. Under the down tower is a tunnel to roll through. Inside is my 11th Chozo artifact, the Artifact of Elder. Now all the way back to the shoreline so I can return to the Chozo Ice Temple. I climb up to the Elder statue and shoot the ice in its hands with the plasma beam to melt it. I climb into the hands and curl up to make it open a tunnel underneath. I roll through and grab that final Chozo artifact, the Artifact of Sun. Now I can finally get past the Chozo's barrier and enter the impact crater. But I'm still missing an item, and now I have to check every item location to work out what I missed. During my search, I also realised that I missed a creature scan in the Tower of Light in the Chozo ruins. As you break down the platforms, the lower levels release armoured version of the puffers, the plater puffers. After 28 minutes of searching, it turns out I hadn't collected every item in the Phazon mines, and it's very early on, in Security Access A, the first room you enter after the main quarry. Right at the start there's a Bendesium fence. I blow it up for the 50th and final missile expansion, getting me the full 250. And that's every item in the game collected. Now I have to leg it all the way back to the Artifact Temple in the Talanoa world. I eventually make it back and approach the middle of the temple. The totems all activate and power up the central totem. But before I can go any further, there's one last loose end I haven't brought up in a while. Meta-Ridley shows up. He flies by and smashes the central totem. He throws some fireballs around and the fight starts, with scanning him being my first action of course. He starts off by flying around over the edge of the temple and breathing lasers at me. That's easy to avoid. Less easy is his spread shot. Then there's the spread shots he does when he flies into the distance and then zooms overhead. If you're locked onto him, you won't actually see those shots until they're hitting you because he moves so much faster than them. And then there's the ground pound into the arena. On the GameCube you could boost ball into him here to burn his wings off early and ground him, but it looks like they fixed that glitch by now. When grounded, he'll just try a couple claw swipes before flying off. This boss fight has an arrangement of Ridley's boss theme from Super Metroid, and this is the game where that theme truly starts belonging to Ridley alone. In Super it was also shared with Dragon, the Torizo mini-bosses and the escape sequences, and Fusion also used it for an escape. But from this game onwards, unless there's something I'm missing, this theme belongs to just Ridley. Once I get Ridley to his last quarter of health, he lands in the arena and his wings burn off. Now his weak point, his chest, is blocked by his hunched stance. As he keeps trying to mouth laser me, I can shoot him in the open mouth. If I time it right, I can also shoot into his mouth before he does his violent charging attack. Enough shots of the mouth will stun him and reveal his chest so I can start dealing damage again. But at this point a normal plasma shot is doing minuscule damage. He can still do his ground pound and at one point does it several times in a row. Overall, this is not one of my favourite Ridley fights. It's okay. It has a great atmosphere, but it's the playing it part that lets it down. I really like the last phase where it's up close and he's throwing everything at you, but that's just the last quarter, and the first flying phase that takes up most of the fight gets tedious when I'm just stood there waiting for him to come back from his trip into the distance. As I've said before, I've played every currently released Metroid game except for Zero Mission and Federation Force, and I haven't played a few of the games in over a decade. But of the rest of the series which I have played, I might say that Prime 1 Ridley's fight is second from the bottom, beating just the original NES Metroid fight. Once again, the fight is okay, but based on what I remember, I think all the others are more enjoyable. When it compares to the main bosses of this game, I guess I like it more than the Parasite Queen and Flagra, but that's because they're easy early bosses that are over in no time, so the fights themselves don't leave much of an impression. If I made a top 10 best bosses and top 10 worst, this would not make either list. Eventually I knock out the rest of Meta-Ridley's health, and the Chozo statues built to the temple turn red with anger at his vandalism. They all laser him in the chest and knock him off the edge. He falls out of view, and only when we can't see him, we see an explosion. Because this was set before Super Metroid, and he can't be dead yet. Where the totems once stood, Chozo ghosts appear, but these ones aren't dicks looking for a fight. They open a portal into the impact crater for me. I go inside, and on the original PAL GameCube version, the opening cutscene narrator comes back just to say, Impact Crater. When that first happened, it made me jump because that guy's been gone all game and I wasn't expecting any more voice acting. The crater entry point has a save station for me. I go through the door into Crater Tunnel A. This place has red Phazon, which is so radioactive and corrosive that not even the Phazon suit is immune to it. But these guys I scan are fine with it, the Lumigek. They are these scarabs of the impact crater. I go through the next door into the Phazon core. This place looks pretty messed up with its orange and black colour scheme and so much of it looking like it was made of giant teeth. There are infinitely spawning fission Metroids in here, and they are much stronger than the ones in the Phazon mines. No point fighting them and wasting resources so close to the final battle if I can avoid it. So I get climbing the giant teeth, which lead to a series of platforms until I can land on the giant tooth pillar in the middle of the room. The first door here leads to the Crater Missile Station, and I realise I haven't scanned a missile station for the logbook yet, so I do now. Then it's back out and time to climb even more platforms. I once again reach a section of the central pillar to land on, and cross a bridge and through a door into Crater Tunnel B. I have a series of magnetic rails to cross over some red Phazon before the door at the end into the Phazon infusion chamber, where this is looking at me. This also made me jump first time in the GameCube, but somehow the Switch model made the face look a little bit goofy, so the effect isn't the same. Probably the only case where I feel the original looked superior to the remaster. It's actually not a giant head, it starts uncurling to reveal the game's final boss, Metroid Prime. This is the creature the space pirates were detecting down here, and the worm the Chozo prophesized. It burrows through the floor in the back and I follow. Scanning it reveals that the Metroid Prime is the source of Phazon. The Metroid Prime changes colours, and the colour it currently is corresponds to the only beam that can damage it at the moment. It has a mouth on its underside that it can fire a huge beam out of. It can also fire a spread shot. When its weakness is the power beam, I can try the super missiles, but its face is the only vulnerable spot and is small and moves around a lot. So it's very easy for the super missile to miss, but when it does hit, the damage is great. After enough damage it lunges at me and then turns purple. I use the Wave Buster for the first time in this run. This is good for the Metroid Prime because it locks onto its face and deals constant damage. The damage from that knocks the Metroid Prime through a hole in the back. I jump down further after it. This new room has 3 tracks in the floor for the Morph Ball. After dealing enough damage to stun it, it will charge to the other side of the room, and those tracks are the only way to avoid it. The new move it has here are firing these slow homing orbs. These can be destroyed for health refills and ammo. This time I finally managed to land a super missile, which is nice. The first phase down this cave was the wave beam, and after stunning it when weak to the power beam, it turns blue to be weak to the ice beam. I find the ice beam the hardest to hit its face with thanks to how slow the shots travel. Mainly I just land shots when it stays still. I try the ice spreader for the first time, but it misses the face, bounces back to me and freezes me in place just in time to get hit by the mouth laser. But thankfully a normal ice shot is damaging enough, and soon after I'm knocking it back down another hole. When I drop down after it, the Metroid Prime has its own kind of grapple beam and drags me into it to damage me before revealing its new weakness to the plasma beam. This time when it's stunned and charges for me, there are only 2 tracks dug in the ground. Ice weakness next, and this time I manage to land the ice spreader. This freezes its face in place, but I don't get to take advantage because the homing orbs were already sent out. Power beam next, and now I'm getting better at landing super missiles. It doesn't last long, so that just leaves a wave beam weakness. This time I just get right in there with the wave buster and keep it going until it's stunned again and falls through another hole. Now the arena has only 1 track for the morph ball to avoid the charge with. It also has a move that sends icicles along the ground that will freeze you on contact. In this phase of the battle, instead of waiting until it takes enough damage, the Metroid Prime can now change its weakness whenever it wants, so now you really have to pay attention. Nothing like getting a super missile aim right, only for it to change colour at the last second. It will also charge more often instead of waiting to be stunned as well. Since I've described all the moves, there's nothing left to do other than get rid of the last of its health. The Metroid Prime is my favourite boss in the game. It keeps you on your toes through the constant weakness changing, it puts so much of your equipment to use instead of just what happens to be recent, and all the attacks it keeps throwing out means there's constant action instead of just waiting until the time to fight back arrives. Even when I died to it a lot in my first ever playthrough, I didn't get too frustrated because I enjoyed the fight that much. I eventually take that last bit of health, losing 2 energy tanks in that phase alone. The Metroid Prime collapses and falls through one last hole. I follow and find that the Metroid Prime has fallen into one more pool of Phazon. Its core leaves the exoskeleton for one last fight. I scan this new form to be told that all of my weapons cannot harm it, only Phazon will damage it. That's also 100% of the scans found in the game. The Metroid Prime starts by letting out a huge shockwave that works in my favour because it breaks all the objects surrounding us and leaves me refills. It will generate a pool of Phazon underneath and then disappear, only becoming visible to one of my non-scan visors. I find it with the X-ray visor and then jump on that Phazon pool it made. My suit absorbs it and puts me into hyper mode, where my beam does huge damage to the Metroid Prime along with stunning it. Once I use up the Phazon pool, it's back to waiting for another. It creates another pool and becomes invisible to the X-ray visor. I find it with the thermal visor, but it took so long for me to find it that I had very little Phazon left before it ran out, plus I lost a lot of health. The next Phazon pool it creates starts generating Metroids too, but I just powerbomb them right away. The Metroid Prime is now visible through the combat visor, so it's much easier to see myself punishing it. And then next time it moves into the X-ray visor again. I managed to get its life bar to end before it can reach the Prime in its name. At this point it starts changing visors even without leaving some Phazon behind. The Phazon pools are now producing Hunter Metroids too. Ever do that thing where you obsess over where the life bar is in relation to the boss's name? So after the next hyper mode shot it gets, its name becomes just Met. At this point I'm pretty confident. I have 8 energy tanks left while it has just under 1/3 of its health. Next pool spawns 2 Hunter Metroids and I mess up by laying the power bomb too far away, so they and the Invisible Prime take a full energy tank from me while I'm waiting to be able to drop another. After the next Hyper Mode shot, it has no name left. I feel 2 more Hyper Mode beams should finish it. But now the Phazon starts producing fully powered fission Metroids, and one of them avoids my power bomb and clings to my head. I blow it up though and rush right into that Phazon. Turns out I was underestimating the strength of this stuff, and this pool has just enough Phazon to finish it off. That is the first time I've ever done a full playthrough of this game without a single death. The Metroid Prime becomes unstable and is reduced to a brain floating in goo. The brain thinks Samus's outfit is pretty sweet and steals her clothes. Luckily she had another layer on underneath, but the Phazon suit is lost forever. It then starts growing and exploding. The creator starts collapsing and I'm told to escape. But the escape is off screen and Samus appears from the portal at the artifact temple. Said temple starts exploding and Samus calls in her ship to pick her up. Luckily it was just the Meta-Ridley boss fight arena that catches fire. Phazon is wiped out on Talon 4 completely, and the narrator comes back to basically say, "I told you at the start of the game, I told you Samus was the best." For collecting at least 75% of the items, Samus removes her helmet. This is probably the most realistic looking attempt at Samus's face. We're still in the time where seeing what she actually looked like was something you had to work for. But this is the 5th game in a row with that, so the next release game dialing back on that doesn't bother me because, as I said in the Metroid 1 video, after 5 games it's not a mystery anymore. Samus then flies off into the credits. But I'm not done yet. After I get my results, showing this run took me 9 hours and 36 minutes, I've unlocked hard mode. Normally I don't bother counting replaying on extra difficulties as part of the 100%, but games like this where there's either an achievement or more extras to unlock for it are the exception. But for 100% completion I get one more scene. A surviving pool of Phazon bubbles and out from it emerges the arm of my stolen Phazon suit, with an eye in the hand. Going through the galleries I have almost everything unlocked with a few exceptions. Those are the entries that require a hard mode completion. The only gallery that was completed was the character gallery. Even the sound test holds back songs for hard mode completion in a world where, no matter how much Nintendo tries, you cannot erase it all from YouTube where it's so easy to find. So I get to work on hard mode. The big difference is that Samus deals 50% less damage and receives 50% more. I didn't record the entire playthrough since I wouldn't have much to say, and that footage would just lay useless taking up space. I 100% the entire game again because having all those resources is just handy for the final bosses. The GameCube and Wii versions had an unlockable fusion suit skin. On the GameCube through connecting to a GBA with a completed fusion cart inside, and on the Wii through that friend voucher bullshit that gated Prime 3 unlockables from me, and now all the content unlocked through them is now inaccessible legitimately. They didn't bring it back for Remastered, which is just a shame and confusing. It's just one character model with a few palette swaps. I would have gone through hard in it if it still existed, but at least with it gone I guess I don't have to look at the hideous Varia colour scheme. I do have some hard mode footage so I can talk about one thing. I still, 14 years later, see people claiming that Yoshio Sakamoto, one of the series creators, said that the Prime games are not canon or in a parallel universe during the build up to the release of Other M. For anyone who's still hearing that, that is not true. It's total misinformation. What was said is that the Prime series is its own self-contained story arc, and its events had no bearing on what they were going for with Other M. Because why would it? These games are set between what were once the 2 earliest games in the series timeline, and Other M was meant to bridge Super and Fusion, games whose stories also had nothing to do with the events of the Prime games. Of course, the main cause of the issue here is that many people really hated Other M. So this led to people either deliberately or unintentionally misinterpreting Sakamoto's words to claim he decanonised Prime for his new game that they hated. We still see this today with translator quotes being misinterpreted and people just fucking going off on one based on faulty information. One of the first things that happens when a new entry in any popular franchise is hated or controversial is demonisation of the most well-known person involved, with "they made something I didn't like" being considered a good enough reason to make assumptions of their character, morality, thought process, everything. It cannot be that they simply misjudge what I would want to see. They must be a bad person and every part I didn't like was made with malicious intent. I definitely remember people even making up the existence of allegations of abusive behaviour. And I do not mean there were allegations that were false. I mean that there were no allegations and no evidence that there were, but people claimed there were anyway. But he made the game they hated, and so anything goes. You'd think Samus Returns, the remake of Metroid 2, which he made, deliberately including continuity to the Prime games would shut this bullshit down. But 7 years later I still see it in places. Point is, the Prime games were always canon, and the only people claiming they weren't were the people upset at the thing that they made up themselves. I was going to go further about the way people treat creators after one misstep and how it made me look at and re-examine my own reactions to creators in the last few years leading to 2010, and did right further. But any more is not relevant to this game and is better saved for if this channel ever makes it to Other M, which would be a long while off since I'm going in timeline order. I did record the Omega Pirate fight so I could go, look how slow this fight is on hard, I died so many times here back when I was 16. But then I got his health so low and was like, oh, never mind, I'm gonna do this first time too. But then the guy decides he's had enough and massacred me, giving me my first death in Remastered. I think I was 11 or 12 when I first played a tiny bit of this game but didn't get far, and at the time, the sight of Samus flatlining was quite distressing for me. And I recorded the last couple fights. Meta-Ridley is just painfully tedious with his health going down so slow. And the Metroid Prime can sometimes look like its health bar isn't even depleting when it takes damage. Still better than Meta-Ridley though. It is a really long fight on hard though, taking about 10 minutes for just the first phase, and then 5 minutes into the core fight it kills me. I somehow tricked myself in the months between recording the game and scripting that this death was in the normal playthrough, and I had this whole thing already written in my head about how annoyed I was I got so close to a no-death playthrough, only for that death I was waiting for to not happen. But I do much better on the second attempt and take it down again. Ending doesn't change my difficulty, but I did manage to shave 2.5 hours off my final completion time from the normal playthrough. That unlocks the last few extras in the gallery. And now I've done everything, let me get very personal for a bit, as playing this game at the time I did for these videos was something I really needed. I'd been planning to record it for a while, but things got put off back in November of last year when we learned my grandmother would only have weeks to live. The channel had to take a back seat to caring for her as she deteriorated. And when she did pass, what time that wasn't spent adapting to now being my granddad's sole carer was spent with me unable to make myself do anything for myself. And that included even playing games. What got me slowly started again was recording this playthrough. I still couldn't play anything alone just for fun, but if it was for the purpose of making a video for the channel, if I thought of it as work, then I could do it. It wouldn't be until March of this year where I was finally able to sit through an entire game, no recording, just for myself and my own enjoyment. But that the game I chose to start recording again with was a Metroid game I knew I liked and had fond memories of was significant. My grandmother played a lot of games and it was something we bonded over. While certain games and series I'd bond with multiple family members over, things like Banjo-Kazooie, Ocarina of Time and Final Fantasy VIII were shared between my brother and both parents, other Final Fantasy games were shared between me, her and my brother, Metroid was a series that only me and her really played. A couple of years as a kid not being able to beat the first Torizo boss in Super Metroid, I tried again at her house and managed it for the first time, and that started us properly with this series. I left the Super Nintendo at hers and we'd pick away at it. She'd play while I was at school and I'd come over after to see if I'd missed anything and take over playing. She played games after Super but she was never able to handle the small screens of handheld systems, so the remaining games she played were the 3 numbered Prime games and Other M. She wanted to be able to play them but just couldn't cope with handhelds. I know she beat Prime 3 and Other M. She got to the final bosses of Prime 1 and Prime 2, but I'm pretty certain she couldn't finish Prime 2. She got much further than I ever have though. Prime 1 I'm not sure about. She played all the way through years before I did, and all I can remember is seeing her at least fighting the final boss. She liked the Prime games, but didn't care for Other M. But unlike people on the internet, she just said I wasn't bothered about that one and moved on right away. Because she was 60 at the time, and internet fandom discourse never once entered her life. She was still alive and fully aware when Dread released, but at that point her illness had made playing games too painful for her, so she never got to try it. Her final new game I believe was Resident Evil 8 a few months earlier. So when Prime 4 comes out next year, it'll be the first game I'm going into without her around, so I'm without the person I usually talk new Metroid with. So playing a game in this series at that time was very comforting in a way. You know, if she was still around, she'd probably kill me for even talking about this. She didn't like us telling things about her to others. I have no natural way to end this part, I just wanted to talk about it. Let's move on to the last bit. Metroid Prime is a very good game, one of the best I've looked at in a while. I struggle to think of any first-person shooters I like more than this. It managed to adapt the exploration of the 2D games, especially Super, into first-person almost perfectly. Like, the only thing I take issue with is that half of the bosses are either uninteresting or boring. But there's just so much to explore and the upgrades are always giving you new things to check out. In fact, I'd say it adapts the gameplay the best. Prime 4 is still a year away and I haven't played Federation Force yet, but I can say right now that Metroid Prime 1 is my favourite game in the Prime sub-series. One of the Metroid series' best games overall and one of the best games from the GameCube, but still not my favourite of either.